Welcome to the Neighborhood Connect podcast show. Hi, I'm your host, Joyce Cox, with my trusted sidekick, Director Paul Young. And this show today is all about home ownership, and it's gonna be the bum tickety.
All right.
So our guests today are Miss Linda Williams.
Hi.
She's the past president of Rozelle Annesdale Neighborhood Association, right? Mm-hmm. And let me say this, the 2017 winners of the Taste of Memphis.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Very good.
We also have Mr. Ralph Perry, who is the executive director of what we call THDA, and that is Tennessee Housing Development Agency. Mm-hmm. And none other than the mayor of Soulsville. That's what they call him.
Good morning.
Mr. Jeffery Higgs. He is the executive director of Lemoyne-Owen College CDC. And today, we're just going to have a conversation about home ownership.
Yeah, I'm excited about today's conversation because there's a lot of things happening across the state. We're glad to have you here today, Ralph. And I wanted to have these local practitioners, these experts on their neighborhoods and their communities to join in this conversation as well, because it's not often that we get to have an audience with a high-ranking state official.
Well, shucks, thank you.
We salute you, sir.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I always enjoy coming back to Memphis. We've got a lot of exciting things going on here.
Great. So, Ralph, I'm going to start the first question with you, and just tell us a little bit about what some of the big issues you're dealing with across the state as it relates to housing, and then I want to hear from our local experts on some of the things, challenges that they have in their neighborhoods and great things they have in their neighborhoods that both you and I might be able to help with.
Yeah, well, especially this time of the year when people are starting to think about buying homes, we want to be very aggressive promoting our Great Choice Mortgage Program, which we call it Great Choice, but for a lot of first-time home buyers of moderate middle income, it really is a great choice. Yeah. We can help you with a competitive rate on a 30-year fixed rate, no gimmick mortgage, and we have down payment assistance. And as you know, we have this new down payment assistance program in targeted areas of Memphis, and it's a big part of the city. Yeah. A THDA eligible borrower is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their down payment and closing cost. It's forgivable over 10 years. And we have just been really excited about the uptake on that. It's been live for about 6 weeks.
Right.
We've already got about 200 mortgages that are done with that down payment. And here's the thing, about 20% of that is right here in Memphis. So we're really excited about the way that's starting. That's the main thing that's keeping us busy right now. And we've seen a really nice uptick in our mortgage loan business all over the state.
Right.
Oh, good. Okay, so Linda?
Well, we're really into rehabbing in the Rozelle-Annesdale area. And we have very old homes, and we need a lot of assistance in rehabbing the cost and finding qualified people to do the work. Mm-hmm. But we have some wonderful success stories. Private contractors have taken over some of the older homes and done a beautiful job on Rainer Street. I wish you would come over there and see. And they have restored them back to their magnificence. And if we could do that on all of the streets, it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And they're doing that with private capital? Private capital.
And most of them, they take a job and they use those funds to fix their homes and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there are two that are just outstanding.
Hi, I'm Jeffery Higgs, Executive Director of the Lemoyne-Owen College Community Development Corporation. You are listening to the Neighborhood Connect podcast on the Kazukian Network.
This is the Neighborhood Connect podcast, and I'm one of your co-hosts, Paul Young. Jeffrey, let's turn it over to you. Let me hear a little bit about what's happening in Soulsville right now.
Yeah, well, for us, we've got a lot of challenges in 06 and 26. I was riding out Edith the other day. Mm-hmm. There's one house on Edith Street. And so, people wonder why schools are closing. Well, we've torn down all these houses, but we've put no stock back.
Right.
And so that presents a real challenge because we've got to build from the ground up. Do we want to have our rental? Do we want to have a nice mixture of what's going on in the neighborhood? And so we're just facing a lot of challenges in terms of acquisitions, in terms of people who don't want to sell but just got an empty lot. And because of where we are, we're close to Mason Temple, we're close to downtown, we're near Lemoyne-Owen. And so as we try to rebuild this neighborhood, we want to make sure that we get the mix right. You understand what I'm saying, Ralph?
Right. Absolutely.
And so those are some of the challenges that we're really facing. And then those other social kind of issues that go on in the neighborhood that people may want to say, well, I don't know if I want to go over there or not. So those kinds of issues that are going on.
So, Ralph, do you see this in other cities across the state? Those similar problems?
There are a variety of things we see. I think from one end of the state to the other, there's just not enough housing inventory.
Right.
Probably one of the few things that's a drag on our business is there isn't a lot of. You're not building new homes in what I call the THDA price range anywhere.
Right.
And there's just not as much out in circulation. So what you're talking about is right. But basically, we're a very diverse state. The kinds of situations that we deal with in our Appalachian Eastern counties are going to be different from what we're trying to deal with here in Memphis.
Right.
Nashville's suddenly becoming a rather high-cost market, so we're seeing a different range of pressures there. So what we try to do increasingly is look at THDA's programs, not that this has to work equally well from one end of the state to the other, but there are going to be some special things that we want to focus on in Memphis, support the work that Paul and the mayor are trying to do to bring people back into the city, and we're going to try to do some other things up east.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I had a meeting last week with some of my colleagues from Chattanooga and Nashville that do similar work in community development. And as the representatives from Nashville were talking, it became abundantly clear that the issues that they have are completely different than the issues we have. They're in a market where the market is bursting at the seams. And so their challenge is they're trying to find ways to preserve affordable housing because every low-cost lot in the city is being purchased and they're putting up a high-rise. And so for us, our goal is to try to figure out how to get more quality affordable housing. We have affordable housing in the city of Memphis, but it's not necessarily quality.
Yeah, and Paul, that quality, I like that. I think that's key because I don't think affordable housing should look like affordable housing.
Right.
It ought to look like everything else that's in any other neighborhood, and I think that's what attracts people to come back to some of these neighborhoods.
You build a house that you would want to live in yourself. So,
and I think it's worth pointing out that our partners, whether it's you, United Housing, they're building that kind of housing.
Exactly.
They're looking to fit into a residential neighborhood if they're doing single family. And you look at the buildings that have been financed for whether tax credits or THDA bonds. Those are you drive by those every day, and no one's going, "Oh, well, that's affordable housing. That just looks like nice housing," and it's affordable to working people who don't make a great deal of money.
Right. So, Linda, I'm gonna bring you in a sec, but Ralph, I wanted to follow up on something you just said regarding tax credits. I know we kind of throw around a lot of these housing terms often, but what do the programs that are offered through THDA mean for the city of Memphis, whether it's tax credits or the home ownership, DPA loans, and all that good stuff?
Well, the down payment assistance program, that's just coupled with our basic Great Choice mortgage program. And if someone is looking to buy a home, here in Shelby County, you can be earning, if you've got a 3-person household, almost $70,000 a year and be eligible for THDA financing. That surprises a lot of people.
Oh, that's good.
I still have people come up to me and go, "Ralph, I thought I made too much money to work with you all." The down payment assistance makes it even more attractive for someone to buy a home in the city. And best of all, we worked with Paul and your staff to make sure that we could marry that up with the incentives that you and the mayor and the council have provided as well. So I think that brings an invested homeowner back into certain areas. The bonds and tax credits are financing tools that we make available to developers to make it easier to build affordable rental housing. Those can be apartments. They can also be used to rehab some stuff. And of course, we've got a big and multi-year commitment to the South City Choice Neighborhoods program.
Great. So, Ms. Williams, I want to bring you in here and just kind of get a little bit of insight. You talked about the rehabs as one of the major things that you guys are working on in your community.
Yes.
What else, since you have an audience with Ralph right now, what else would you need, do you see as being perfect opportunities for your community?
We have a lot of shotguns in our neighborhood, and they've torn them down. So we have that empty space there. And they can't support a large house, but they can support tiny homes.
Yeah.
And, the $25,000 you're talking about, that would be ideal to build good quality, energy efficient, smaller homes.
Yeah.
So what kind of process would we do, could we use to get that out?
Well, there are a couple things. One, if you're talking about where do we get the money to build.
Right.
THDA's grant programs do support the development of affordable housing. Now, generally, that's going to go to a nonprofit that is going to build those, and in most cases is then going to sell them. We don't find too many people who want to build and be landlords for the next 10, 20 years. But then the question is the financing that's available for someone who's going to buy that home.
Right.
And there it gets complicated. We will do those loans, of course, but for a lot of lenders, the consideration is, the fees on a very small loan are a higher percentage of that, and that gets federal regulators upset, and no bank wants to be in the bullseye of federal regulators. So it's hard to find someone who's willing to do a $35,000 mortgage on that spot. And then, of course, how ready is a purchaser for that? I mean, we'll help you. If you got a credit score of 640, we can work with you. If you're not quite there, we'll want to help you work through one of our many counseling partners and get ready. So, the question for you is, do I have customers ready to buy if I build it? And what'll it cost me to build it? And then try to access some of those grant funds.
Great.
You're listening to Neighborhood Connect podcast. I'm Paul Young, and right now I know, Mr. Perry, you need to probably slide to the next appointment, but I did want to give you an opportunity before you leave if you want to send our listeners to a website, or how can they access the programs at THDA? The
best place to start is our consumer website, which is simply www.greatchoicetn.com. When you get there, click on First Time Home Buyer. It'll tell you about our Great Choice mortgage product. It'll tell you about the down payment programs. It'll give you a list of all the lenders we work with who can help you get going, and also all the home ownership counselors that we work with in this area, and a couple of helpful links for advice on how to get started. We think home ownership opportunity is a lot closer than people imagine.
Definitely. And
we encourage them to take a look at that mortgage product and take a look at the down payment assistance and the neighborhoods where you can get the $15,000. I think what we're finding is a lot of people who've been thinking, well, I'd like to buy a home and I'll probably get to it in the next couple of years. All of a sudden they're going, there's a house, here's the down payment, I've got good credit, I can support that mortgage, and they're going in right now, which is why we're getting such a nice uptick in our business here.
Great.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Well, we thank you, Ralph, and we want you to come back again.
Please.
Yes.
I will make a point to do it.
We want to definitely have a great conversation with you again. Thank you so much for being a part of the Neighborhood Connect podcast.
I'm happy to do it. Thanks for the invitation.
And we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Linda Williams, the immediate past president of the Rozelle-Annesdale Area Association, and you are listening to the Neighborhood Connect podcast on the Kazukia Network.
Welcome back to the Neighborhood Connect podcast. Mr. Perry had to leave us, but we still have Miss Williams and Mr. Higgs.
Yeah.
And of course, my Mr. Paul Young here. So let's continue our conversation. You know, we were talking about home ownership and some of the issues that we feel here in Memphis. Right. And Jeffrey, you want to kind of help us out here?
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit of it earlier. You know, when we talked about this empty land. You know, we're rushing to tear down blighted properties. You know, that's been a big issue for the last few years. But I think what we sort of failed to do as a city is what are we going to do when we replace that?
Exactly.
So we tore these houses down. People moved out. Then all of a sudden, a school went from 800 capacity to 100. Now we want to close the school. So we've destroyed that neighborhood. And so I think as we plan and move forward, we've got to really figure out, once we ought to be replace one, tear one down, replace one. Exactly. And I think I think that's something that a policy or something, Paul, that we've got to figure that piece out, or we're going to have these neighborhoods are going to just be devastated.
Yeah, when I was in grad school, they talked about problems that have so many different external influences that they're difficult to solve, and they call them wicked problems. And so, the blight that we deal with is one of those wicked problems where, you can tear down the structure, but what does it take to rebuild that structure, and how do you rebuild the fabric of a community? And it involves the schools, it involves criminal justice, and all of these different things that it takes people like yourselves that are very engaged. And Ms. Williams, you guys just got the award at Tiger Lane for the neighborhood
for the second time in a row.
For the second time in a row. So you guys are doing something right. And I think that engagement is important.
Absolutely. If you don't have a community that's involved in attacking the problem, and you don't see the people working together, in our area, the school is working with us and the churches, so you see the community engaged, actively engaged and building the community.
Right.
And the other thing is the green spaces. People want to move to where there are green spaces. And our Tire Garden is just so attractive to people moving into the area. They've seen us take a problem, an eyesore, and make something beautiful out of it. So they said, well, I don't mind living here. And and we do little things that other people don't do. We have vacant houses, but you can't tell they're vacant.
Right.
Because we have flowers around them, and I put little solar lights there. They still are solar lights, but you put some more solar lights. Right. So you you actually deal with the real problems that you face.
Right.
But you have to make your neighborhood attractive. And if it's not attractive, no one wants to live there.
Right.
So some of the challenges for us are to make the negatively, like South Memphis, some of they think that's a terrible place, live. You have to make that attractive. Right. And so having, little cookouts and rallies and just little parades, neighborhood parades, that really helps to just enliven your neighborhood and give it a better reputation.
Right.
So it seems like it's those simple things that kind of pull people together.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing you say. But also, as it relates to housing, how do you, because you typically hear Memphis is the capital of bankruptcy. So do people qualify for housing? And so how do you work with those people?
Yeah, Joyce, I think, there's a lot of ways. Ralph mentioned, getting into home buyer education classes, because you got to kind of meet people where they are. And so you've got to get them prepared and ready. Used to be when we got money from HCD, we couldn't speculate on a house. Right. We had to have a buyer.
Exactly.
And so during that time of getting them ready, getting the house ready, we were also getting them ready.
Right.
So I think more of that, getting people prepared and ready. Because if you're paying $600, $700, $800 a month in rent, according to Ralph, and we all know it, you can own a home.
Right. That's right.
And so we've got to just prepare people and get them ready. So as we fill up some of these empty spaces we talked about, we can put people in those houses.
So, Fraser has a program where I think they're marketing where you can, if you're paying $700 a month, then you can pay a certain amount in their communities, basing it on home ownership. So some other areas I would think would basically do the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But now, let me go back to my beginning years at ACD. I worked in the down payment assistance program. And what we found was you can put people in homes. With the $10,000 down, you pay down your mortgage or down payment.
Right.
But once they get there, they find out, well, I've got to mow the lawn. I've got to, if the toilet goes out, I've got to repair those things. So you need to do the post and pre-counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you go and buy a car. And if you're already marginal with your ratios, that's a problem. Right. So I think that this is my own opinion now, that those, Jeffrey, that those two have to work hand in hand. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right. It's about education.
Exactly.
And preparing people to be homeowners.
Right.
Because the maintenance is a big part of that. A lot of people lose their homes because of the roof starts leaking and they don't repair the roof, and then there's the bathroom and the floors and things that messed up. So it is important to understand you take care of the small things first.
Right.
And that is important in home ownership.
You're listening to Neighborhood Connect, and we're here talking about home ownership. So one of the conversations that I was in the other day, we were talking about home ownership, and one of the things that became abundantly clear is that home ownership isn't for everybody.
That's right.
We have to make it accessible and within reach, but we also must provide other forms of housing, and we have to have rental. And I know that in some neighborhoods they frown upon rental, but it's necessary. And the question is, how are the structures designed, and are they designed to accommodate the types of facades that you want to see in your community, or are we trying to build 500 unit apartment complexes, which may not necessarily be as favorable in some communities? And so as we have this discussion, I do want to make sure that we acknowledge that we're not saying rental is bad.
Right.
We're saying that we also want to make sure that those opportunities are there for people as they explore their options.
Absolutely. We have a quadplex that's really wonderful in our neighborhood, and you can't tell it's not a single family dwelling.
Right.
It just blends in that well. So there is a place for renters, and renters are important to your community because you can have a lot of children out of that apartment. So that's important in growing the community and keeping the schools filled. So we are to welcome, I think, the renters into our neighborhood and to teach them how to be good neighbors.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's just so important.
I think that's where your neighborhood associations come in. I remember when I was growing up, they used to have the welcome wagon.
Right.
And I think that was a twofold purpose, because you got to know who your neighbor was. And some of it was you being a little nosy. Yes, you were. But you knew who lived next door to you.
Right.
And you had an opportunity to kind of show people, well, if I'm not accustomed to cutting my grass, if you have a teenage son, have him cut the grass.
That's right.
It's all a part of, as my grandfather used to say, many hands make your load light.
Right.
So that means working together as a community, and you teach people a sense of community.
Right.
And I think that's some of the things that we've lost.
Yeah. Well, it has to be a balance.
Right.
You want home ownership. We've always thought, and we just still do. Home ownership is how you build wealth.
Right.
Especially in our communities.
Yes.
Over the last couple of years, we've been doing this planning for our neighborhood for the Soulsville USA, and we did a survey, and overwhelmingly, most of the residents say, we don't want any renters. But there has to be a balance in that. And as you mentioned, Ms. Williams, about doing things that are attractive to the neighborhood to bring people back in.
Yes.
We just got one of the corporations in our neighborhood to repave Chandler Park, which is a well-used asset. It's down the street from Lemoyne-Owen and the Cummings School. But that's part of the partnership of the neighborhood, having that balance, and building these green spaces, as you mentioned, attractive spaces for people to sort of relax, once they are not off work or something like that, and having these just great spaces in the neighborhood. So it's a balance, I would think.
Yeah, I agree. I was driving down Poplar, and there's a neighborhood that's directly behind where the old Sears used to be, at Poplar and Perkins.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that there are actually rental properties, triplexes, fourplexes, mixed in that community.
And you wouldn't think that
You
because
would
it's
not.
Poplar
No,
Avenue. Right.
exactly.
Right.
And I was like, wow,
Right.
oh my God. So there is, as you said, Jeffrey, there needs to be a balance.
Right.
Because everybody is not going to be a homeowner. But they still need decent and affordable housing.
Yep. Definitely.
I think we need to go back to the education part of this too, because we have to teach our young people the importance of having high credit scores.
Definitely.
And not making these mistakes, because they send out the credit card and you charge it up and your credit score goes down,
Right.
So if we catch them early,
Right.
they can be homeowners.
Definitely.
But they to get this money. You're in college, that creded card is very attractive.
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
have to buy
They got me.
food.
They got me.
And I think all of us were there.
You're struggling.
So we're talking about credit scores. But that's down the road. I don't need that. That's not important. But it's very, very important.
Yes, it
It's
is.
very important. It reminds me of the book that John Hope Bryan has, where he's talking about how
How the poor can save capital.
how the poor can save capitalism, and part of the whole premise of the book is just imagine if we raised our credit scores in this community by 100 points.
Right,
Exactly.
right, absolutely.
How many more businesses could be started? How many folks can access capital for
Yes.
that? Which is creating jobs.
Yes.
Which just ripple all throughout our community, and the housing that can be
That's
purchased
right.
and accessed. So it's an important piece.
Exactly.
They're also using your credit scores when you go on job application.
Right.
People didn't even know that.
Right.
They're using them for so many things now that they didn't do in the past. So it's really important for us to make that the public aware of the importance of getting a good credit score.
Right. Well, we're reaching the end
Yes.
of today's
my
podcast.
goodness, I hate
know
this.
the conversation can get deep, and we can go a lot of different ways when we start talking about how to address issues in this community.
Right.
But I want to give you two the last word, and say anything you want to leave with the listeners.
Yeah. I'll just say I just think homeownership is the way to build wealth, and especially in the African American community.
Exactly.
And so if we can keep these young people's credit scores high, if we can encourage people, if you're renting and paying $700 plus a month, you can own a home. And so I think, if we can build that wealth, get back into these neighborhoods around these old schools, we can really start to sort of rebuild these core neighborhoods, because I think that's where our opportunities are.
I like to address trying to keep your homes, if you have your homes. A lot of the young people are losing the homes of their parents when they die and things like that, because they're not paying the maintenance and utilities and things like that. So it is important to continue to be a homeowner once you're a homeowner. Don't let the home go and get sold into foreclosure and things like that. Try to keep what your parents have earned and try to maintain and build on that. And we can keep the old neighborhood strong with you, work together as a community and solve the problems together that we face.
Well, we want to say thank you to both of you for joining us today on the Neighborhood Connect podcast show, hosted by myself, Joyce Cox, and Director Paul Young of Housing and Community Development.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is Neighborhood Connect, executive produced by the Division of Housing and Community Development, hosted by Paul Young and Joyce Cox for HCD, engineered, recorded, and produced by Kutsukian.